Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Facebook Live virtual listing posts again. We had such a great success with our previous listing posts and so much interest. Now, I know that the Premier is also about to make announcements right now at this same time, so many people may well be listening to the Premier because I believe there's going to be some fairly scary numbers announced this afternoon in relation to infections. I think it's getting close to 500, which is going to be pretty confronting. I believe the Premier is doing that right now, so we may have a few more people joining us once they have heard that update from the Premier. But look, welcome to everybody. Welcome to my colleagues Karen and Hugh, who have joined me to help out today as we address some of the issues that you have raised with us. We have a whole range of issues that have already been sent in advance. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, you can, in the comment section where you're watching, you can send in updates. Sitting here in the room with me, I have Kate and Lockie from our comms department, and they're going to take those messages and pass them through to me as they come. So please feel free to participate and we'll deal with them as best we can. It's not ideal, but it is a good opportunity for us to talk with you about the issues that you've raised with us. Last quarter when we did this, we had around 60 people join us, which we were very encouraged by. So hopefully you can stay with us for the next hour or so while we go through some of the issues that have been asked of us today. So let's kick off. One of the very early questions that came in, and it's a question which we also received last quarter when we did the listening post, is around our business community. The questioner asks, the businesses everywhere are struggling and there seems to be a lot of empty shops in town. What is council doing to support our business? Now, we are in fact doing quite a bit, but I'm going to ask Hugh if he wants to kick off and explain, because Hugh actually represents the council on a task force that we've set up. So Hugh, can you talk a little bit about what's happening in that space?
Thanks, Noel, and welcome to all the people from across the Central Goldfields Shire. Look, it was back early in this year when COVID did hit. We established an economic response and recovery task force. We invited people from right across our Shire to nominate for that, and we've got a range of businesses right across the geographic region of our Shire, whether that be Denali, whether it be Talbot, Carrisburg, Mirabara. We've got people from those areas. We've been meeting since mid-May, so it's been going a while now. We were meeting weekly. We are now meeting, we cut back to fortnightly, but with what's happening at the moment, we might even have to increase that. But we've got people here from small businesses. We've got bakeries, we've got community house, we've got the Bendigo Bank involved. We've also got a caravan, camping, motel accommodation. We've got a farmer. We've also got people here from the Committee of Mirabara. So there's a good cross section of people from across our Shire to help and guide us in what we can do to support businesses that are no doubt suffering. We even had last Wednesday, we had linked into our task force meeting, we had the local federal member for Mallee, Anne Webster, who was able to listen to some of the concerns, particularly about the changes to Job Keeper and Job Seeker. There was a lot of concern about there could be a cliff that people would go over in September. So again, we have put a lot of support into try and do that. We have supported a campaign to shop locally and support your local businesses. We're also developing a Main Street strategy, which will help the businesses. We've also, importantly, early in the campaign, we've developed a COVID financial hardship support package. And that is where we've suspended debt recovery actions. We've extended the rate repayments till September the 30th with no interest. We've waived interest on overdue rates and waste charges. And also there's a lot of others that we've done, but particularly rent on council business facilities. So on whether it be a business or a sporting club that were renting council facilities, they have been cut back. So we've been doing a lot of things. We're also encouraging, and I encourage anyone who's listening in today to shop local, because there's no doubt, particularly our eating places, our restaurants, our food places, and particularly our accommodation places are hurting a lot. So that's some of the things we're doing to support businesses in our Shire.
We have a a database, I understand now, and I think that picks up virtually every business in the Shire, and they're getting a weekly update, I understand, in terms of what support is out there. And I guess that'll be really important with this latest round of announcements with the extension of job seeker, job keeper, those sorts of things. So there'll be an opportunity for businesses to be kept up to date with all that information.
Right at the start, yeah, you're right, Noel. We tried to contact, we've got about nearly 600 businesses across our Shire. We've now, I think we've got all their email addresses. So whether it be information coming from the federal government, the state government, we're tailoring it to the Central Goldfields Shire, and we're getting it out to businesses. And that they've really appreciated that. But again, it's about the way we interact with our businesses and get their ideas. We haven't got a mortgage on knowledge. We really value their input because some of them are doing it very tough. One of the things they've really supported, Noel, is we've introduced, and now it's gone through council, a better approvals program, which will help anyone who wants to do an extension to their business or even a house or anything. There's a lot better process, which will fast track a lot of the long time it takes to get through some of those planning decisions. So that's another one that the group has supported. They've also supported a small business friendly charter. We're now paying accounts within a week to a fortnight rather than a month. So those type of things, we're trying to get money back into the community. And I have to say, we've also been greatly supported by the state government through the Work in Victoria program. Yep. And that was for people who are unemployed. We're prepared, we hope that they would all come from our Shire, but obviously we haven't got everyone from our Shire. But again, it's giving jobs to people for the next 6 months.
Yeah, there has been a very encouraging number, though, Hugh, of people who have from the Shire who have actually engaged with that Working for Victoria program, and that is really encouraging. So, I think it's probably better than we had hoped it would be. So that again is a really good opportunity. I think we might have lost Hugh. He looks like he's. Oh no, you're back with us. We lost you for a second there. So I think they are great initiatives, and we are continuing to do that. And again, if anybody needs further information about any of those programs, all the stuff that we're talking about is available on Council's website. And we will touch on a question, because there is a question about the amount of grants and things that have been given to us, because we are focusing as much as we can on making sure that work, or some of that work, goes to local tradespeople and contractors locally. So we'll talk about that when we come to that question a little bit further on. So thanks, Hugh, for that. That's really good. Karen, did you want to add anything further to that?
No, but I'd be interested to know whether or not people are still not quite certain about what is their roles, what's the responsibilities. I know in the early days of some of the precautionary measures that we all had to abide by, and there was a level of confusion about it when it got going. I'm assuming, Hugh, that that's people do now know what is expected of their business and what they can and they can't do or asked not to do. I'm interested to know what the response from our community is.
Well, majority, as I say, and Noel talked about there before, we've got all their emails. We're pushing through information coming out from the Department of Health about what they can do in their businesses, the spacings and all those type of things. But I have to say, I know the last week they are now getting very concerned that they might be in further lockdown, but at this stage we're not. So they are getting direction from the Department of Health about what type of business they've got and what type of spacing they must have, all those type of things. But I think it's incumbent on all of us to make sure we do the social distancing. But again, I think that we're not far away from having to wear masks, particularly where you are, high density places, whether it be in the supermarket or travelling on public transport or something like that.
Yeah,
I've just talked about that mask issue this morning. I did an interview on the radio about the fact that certainly the numbers that are coming out today are going to probably make that even more likely. I must admit, I've got my pack of masks ready. I've got them sitting in the car. It's for those circumstances where I actually need them. I have worn them once in the supermarket. You feel a bit of a dill the first time, but after that, when you see lots of other people wearing, you don't feel quite so out of place. And I would hope that if we need to, we get to the point where you actually feel out of place if you're not wearing one. But I think it's just something we're going to have to get used to. And we're not at that point yet, but it'll be interesting to see what restrictions will come out of today's announcement. But let's move on. Thanks, you for that. I guess the message is that we are doing all that we can in making sure that our businesses right across the Shire are as informed as they can be, and are kept up to date. And to me, that's the most important part, and that's why I'm so excited. The fact that we're sending out this weekly newsletter, basically, keeping everybody up to date with the latest up-to-date information. To me, that's the most important part of that one. So let's move on. Another question that was raised, that has been raised, that was several times with us now over the course of these listening posts, both in person and online. When will Council inform us whether or not the request for the Central Goldfields Shire to declare it a welcome zone for refugees has been successful? And then the second question, which came in around that same topic, was, has the welcome refugee zone been enshrined in rules and regulations for the coming council elections? I might just sort of make a very brief introductory comment. No, they're not enshrined and can't be. That's not quite how it works. If council decides it wants to declare the Central Goldfields Shire as a welcome refugee zone, then that's the decision of the council. It doesn't need to be enshrined in rules or regulations. It has not been acted upon, and I think our previous comments were that it would be picked up when we have community development. I'm trying to think of the right name. Community Development Officer on board, which we now have. But of course, Kim has been well and truly consumed, I think would be the best way, in responding to the COVID situation. That's been a really serious focus of hers, and she's been managing that, and certainly this hasn't, I guess, got to her yet. No doubt it will. So I don't know whether either you want to make a comment on that one. It will, look, to be really honest, I say let's not pretend otherwise. This will be a decision that will be made by the incoming council. It's not something that we're going to get to.
Yeah, I think so.
Given the situation we now find ourselves in.
And I have to say, Noel, I think that it's important for all of us to welcome all people, not only refugees. We've got a lot of multicultural people moving into our country communities, and particularly helping us, I know, in medical services, nurses and things like that. If we didn't have some of these people coming into our areas, we wouldn't have doctors or nurses. So I think it's important. And I think it's, we can't do it these days, but if you see someone up the street that you haven't met before, you put out your elbow these days and can't shake the hand, but just introduce yourself and make them
gently.
feel welcome.
You put your elbow out very gently.
Very gently, yeah. The old footy days are not there, but seriously, I don't think we do that enough. And I think that
Indeed.
And I think we should be a welcome community all the time, not only for refugees.
Agreed. So yes, so the answer is nothing hasn't progressed, but it will be a decision which will be made by the incoming council. Another question which I certainly anticipated we would probably get is around the skate park, and of course we had the very exciting announcement around funding for the skate park, which we budgeted for, and our budget is coming up, and I'm going to mention the budget shortly. But we budgeted our component, and of course it was a week or so back we got an announcement from the state government that they would, through Sport and Rec, would be funding that component of the skate park development. So the question is, I'm a young person who uses the skate park even though it's crappy. Typical local young person's question. Thank you for listening to the young people. We are so excited about the new park. When will work be starting? We understand why the old one has to be sold, but can we keep using it until the new one is open? Now, I don't know whether either of you want to take that one on or respond to that one.
Well, I think, I have to congratulate the young people for their campaign. Right from the start, we had a petition presented to us. They were very active and they've followed through on that. We have also followed through from the point of view, it was one of our priority projects that we developed up. And I think that priority project list gave us the opportunity, when we're talking to members of parliament, whether it be federal or state, talking to ministers, both be federal and state. And we've, over the last couple of years, we've got fantastic support. We are delighted, absolutely delighted that we've got state government support to the tune of a lot of, I think
$250,000. Yep.
$250,000 now. But the reality is we do need to put more money into that. And we've put it out there to people. We'd like to sell the land where the old skate park is. So that'll take a little bit of time to go through. We're still going through the consultation phase, but it will not hold up the opportunity for us to build the skate park. We've identified the area down there at Princess Park. We've also got a schematic, a basic design. A little bit more work does to be done on that, but I think we should be able to move fairly quickly on that one. But no, we won't be selling. Hang on, sorry. No,
Yes, yes, you can keep using it. No, we're not selling it straight away.
That's correct. Yeah, no, we're not selling land straight away. You'll be able to keep using it, and that's going to be the good thing. You'll have a transition from one to the other, and it'll be a great fill up for the young people of Mirabara and the Shire, but also I think highlights again the value of Princess Park down there. It is a really multi-use facility catering for a lot of people, whether it be sport, energy breakthrough, a lot of activities, caravan park, a lot. There's a lot of activities around Princess Park.
Okay.
I'm just excited about the whole project, and I think we're really very fortunate that we had that project really where it was at. So it definitely was a shovel-ready type of project that we genuinely had there, and so many people have supported this of all ages, and it's just been great to see that. And we're very optimistic that this is not going to be too far off before people will be able to enjoy the new park. Then that probably raises a question of whether or not there are some items on the existing skate park that could be relocated across the Shire as well. And I don't know that. We'd have to have somebody look at that, I imagine, and assess them. But I'll be very pleased when we see everybody using the new park at Princess Park. It's just going to be a great project that's happened. So
the answer actually is quite a simple question. The answer is quite clear. The new park will be completed before the old park is dismantled. There's no question about that. We got funding to build the new park because it was shovel ready, as you say, Karen. That was one of the reasons we got funded. And because of the zoning, and I did explain this at the time when we advertised our intention, we decided that we needed to advertise our intention to sell to get community responses to that. We made it quite clear that there was a rezoning would need to be required. So that could take probably up to 2 years for actually that to be completed. So the new park will be open well and truly, and before the old park is dismantled. So the users will not be left waiting. It's a very exciting opportunity, and we don't get opportunities like this very often. Council is in a position to actually make that transition and fund the new park whilst we're waiting to complete the sale process of the current site.
the old one. Yeah.
Don, you?
Noel, I also want to say for the Denali community, there is a little bit of a skate park being built up there in the reserve there. So
track, they call that one.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I've seen one of those in operation. They are fantastic too. Kids can ride bikes, scooters, rollerblades. They're able to do them on that type of thing too. So there's a lot of activities again for our young people in their leisure time to be able to get involved with. So again, yes, it's great to see that kids will be able to still use the old skate park in Mirabara, but hopefully the new one won't be that far away.
Indeed.
Okay. So now, just one final thing, just in our last conversation about the rezoning, that is only dealing with the existing skate park. As far as the new one is concerned, that is of no consequence whatsoever. Two separate pieces of work. Yep.
Thanks for that clarification. Let's move on. Another question, which we certainly had a similar question last time, this again is around the council elections, upcoming council elections. There's a number of sort of sub points underneath this question. And the first part is, given the situation with COVID-19, why haven't the council elections been deferred as they have been in New South Wales? I guess we can only say to that that's a decision of the state government. It's not a decision of ours. We have not stated any position on that. We are obviously will comply with whatever the state government requires of us. So again, if people have those questions, they need to direct them to the state government rather than to us. We simply comply with the law as it stands. Excuse me. So then the questions, a number of questions that sit on that one. How will we be able to find out who is standing for council? How will we know what they stand for? When will we have to vote? can the sacked councillors stand again? And have you finished, have you finished, or will you finish, or when will you finish your job of fixing things? When will the administrators leave? So there's a number of sort of sub-questions. Let's deal with it with the general principles of the election itself. On councils, if anybody's interested, if you go to the council website, on the very first page, you look under council and you'll find there's a whole page about the council elections. And I actually downloaded it last night, which actually outlines the process for elections. And it is quite clear. So the nominations for council, no one knows who's actually going to nominate until they've actually formally nominated. Even some people, I know there's been a couple of people already who've come out and announced they're going to run, and that's perfectly fine. But until the actual nominations open and then close, we don't actually know who is running for council in a formal sense. Because those people who went out early may in fact change their mind and say, well, actually something's happened and I can no longer do that. So nominations for council open on the 17th of September. So that's when the formal nominations open and people start filling out the forms and paying their money to nominate. Nominations then close on the 22nd of September. So it's a fairly small window of nominations. So we will know who is running for council on the 22nd of September. That's about a month before the election date itself. The election date itself is the 24th of October, but elections are going to be conducted, as are all council elections this year, will be conducted by mail. So people will start receiving their ballot papers. I don't know the date when they'll be sent out, but it would usually be a couple of weeks before the election. So people have 2 weeks to fill out their election ballot papers and send them back in. So that will come out around the middle of October is when you will have to vote, and then they close on the 24th. Now there's people, I guess I encourage people to actually, to get your ballots in early, because given the Australia Post, etc., it can slow things down and will slow up the result. The actual result of the election is not, whilst yes, there's all sorts of announcements made, is actually not declared, I think, until the 13th of November is what they're calling Declaration Day. But that's around about when the first council meeting was held. So we will know before that. But if there's disputes, etc., it can take some time to work those through. So 17th of September, nominations open. 22nd of September is when we will know who has nominated in every seat in the Shire. That's where we will get that information. Obviously, it's up to the candidates themselves to get information out there about what they stand for. And there is no required way to do that. Some people use pamphlets and flyers. Some people will be on the radio. Some people using Facebook and social media and so on. That is entirely up to the candidate. But I guess there is an obligation, I think, on voters to actually inquire of the candidates and make sure that you ask them what are the things that they stand for. I do know, and I have been contacted by the Committee for Mirabara, who are intending to run a candidate forum. Now, if they can do that, depending on what the situation is at the time, if that can be done at the town hall or something like that, they will do that. If not, it'll be done electronically like we are today. So there will be plenty of opportunities for people to hear what the candidates have to say and what they stand for. Those things are outside of our control. The elections themselves are run by the State Electoral Commission. And again, if you go on to this, to Council's website and have a look at this information about the 2020 elections, there's links through to the VEC website, which will tell people exactly what it is that you need to know. When will we have to vote? I think I've covered that. Can sacked councillors stand again? Well, we had that question last time. Yes, they certainly can. It's a democratic process, and anybody who is a resident of the Shire or on the rolls here can in fact stand for council, and that includes the dismissed councillors. Have you finished, or when will you finish your job of fixing things? So that's an interesting question. I guess you guys might want, or when will we leave? Well, that's the easy bit. We finish our appointments here at the commencement of the first council meeting of the newly elected council. It's as specific as that. So I think it's 6 o'clock on the 10th of November. I think it's around about that, I think, is the date. So it's quite clear when we will finish. Have we finished our job, and will we finish fixing things? either one of you want to make a comment on that? I'm happy to make a comment, but if either of you want to say something around that? Not particularly. Yeah, go you.
Well, I think, look, there's a few things we'd love to, I'll step into Karen's area, but, obviously the Carrisburg levy, we're still making progress, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more done before then. But I can tell you we've been pushing hard to get everything completed so that can start. Hopefully, I know there's a little bit of work started now, but not everything as we'd like. But overall, I think we've got just about everything done. We've reviewed all the policies, we've updated them so that when the new council come in, they'll have all the policies will be updated for their going. But one thing I think we need to mention, Noel, is that the new Local Government Act has come in, and one of the requirements is that anyone who's standing for council has to do some mandatory training, which I know we've been in contact with the Minister's Office, we've been in contact with the Office of Local Government, and there is training programs that are going to be done with. Looks like it'll be done online because that's the only way we can do it these days. But I think for any candidate or prospective candidate, they should be aware that they need to do this mandatory training package before they nominate.
Just to add to what Hugh has said, Noel, I would just like to point out that we were canvassed, all of the councils were, about deferring, postponing the council elections. And my sense was that whilst it was almost sort of line ball about the councils that supported that and those that did not, but from the rural council perspective, I think most probably wouldn't have minded having a little bit more time. Like there was, I think, a suggestion of 3 months or 6 months or 12 months that came to the MAV and the rural councils. And people had an opportunity to think about it. And I think the people that didn't raise it with me, I think they would have perhaps preferred that it had not been gone ahead at the normal time, was just the personal interaction I'd had. But in fact, the decision was taken by the minister, and that's what it is. So I think it is going to, I think it's great on the one hand that Central Goldfields will have their elected councillors. We're all looking forward to that. But I think it's going to be difficult for the people thinking about nominating, about how they run their campaign and get able to sort of sell their vision for the Shire. It's going to be a very different type of election. But it was the minister's wish. And I suppose about have we fixed enough things? As Hugh has pointed out, we've done a lot of work in having up-to-date strategies and policies and processes. And I suppose I'm very cross with the COVID virus because we had done a great, I thought it was a really exciting exercise going around to the local communities and asking and encouraging them and making them think about the future for their own localities. We did it in Mirabara as well, but it was really the impact that it had on those smaller communities. And I think we all would have loved to have been out there and being able to promote what those communities have wanted and to see what happens in the next future regarding them, you know. So that's going to be an exciting piece of work for the new council, I think, to have, and it will be great because it'll be a means whereby they can really open up those conversations about, well, what does Denali want and what does Bialaba want, or Talbot? And it'll be great to have all that information that's been done. And of course, this is Kim's area again, which is really adding more to her areas which she manages. So, but I think that will be great. And I'm sure the three of us will be really fascinated to see how that pans out.
We will indeed.
The virus is a bit of a nuisance.
So the answer to that question is yes, our work will be done. But if put that in context, the process of reform is never finished. And there will be some reforms which will continue under the new council once we leave this place. But I actually was looking through some of what we have been able to achieve just in terms of our policies, and it is quite a staggering amount of work that has been achieved. We have agreed and adopted 13 governance policies, 14 community policies, and 21 organisational policies. That's a massive amount of reform work that has been undertaken in the last 2.5 years. On top of that, of course, we've had a very, very rigorous auditing program, which is ongoing and will be ongoing for a number of years yet. I think I'm not quite sure exactly how many audits we undertook, but there was a significant amount which we have done. And I think we ended up with about 145 was the last count of actions that were required that have been exposed or deliberated on by the audit committee. So those works will continue on. But yes, our job will be done when we leave. It has been a little slower, I guess, than we would have liked because of COVID, has slowed us down somewhat. But irrespective, we will be ready, and the community will be ready for a newly elected council come October, should that continue to occur as planned. So let's move on. If anybody has joined us since the start, that we welcome anybody who has just joined us. Please, if you have any comments to make, slip them through to us on the comment section of the Facebook page, and we'd be more than happy. We'd love to hear from you. And so please do that. We've actually covered a range of topics already this morning. We've talked about business support. We've talked about the welcome for refugees. We've talked about the council elections. We've talked about the skate park, and we've still got plenty to get to yet. So let's move on and deal with a range of others that have been raised. One of the questions that has came in during the week was, I know someone who sent in an FOI request and it hasn't been answered. Why not? I can't answer the specifics of that one, and probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to do so. But I can simply say there is a formal legal process that sits around FOI requests. We don't make people, or we don't desire that people should have to go down that process, but sometimes that's unavoidable, and the information that's been asked for needs to be a bit more scrutinised than would otherwise be the case. Worthwhile pointing out, though, it's not such an issue, or certainly hasn't been a major issue for this council. We've had a few FOI requests that have gone through, and that's fine. We don't have a problem with that. But it isn't a cheap exercise, and it does consume a significant amount of ratepayer resources and ratepayer monies. It's not an issue for us, but I do know one of our neighbouring councils spends $500,000 a year managing those sorts of requests. Now, that's a very, very significant impost. And if we ever had got to that point, it would be a very significant problem for us. So there is a legal process that needs to go through. We comply with the FOI request as best we can. And it just sometimes takes time. And for whoever that questioner was, I assure you the answers will come. And as soon as they can, that legal process can be completed in that way. So let's move on. There's a couple of quite specific questions around the airfield, which has come in. There was two questions. One was, what's happening at the airfield and why did we close it? Was one question that came in. I simply would respond to that, say that it isn't closed. We haven't closed it, and it's operating as normal. It just has a different, it sits in a different category now than it did. Another question that came in around the airport said, can you please give us an update as the present situation of the airport? Has the airport been kept to the previous maintenance standards? Yes, it has. The maintenance of the airfield has not been changed because of safety reasons. We can't do that and can't until we actually build the new fence that we've been funded to do. And the other issue is around some of the erosion controls that's been undertaken out there at the direction of the EPA. That work has been completed. And we are waiting for netting. We need to put some bird netting over the ponds that are being created by that work. That netting is ordered. I think it has to come from overseas or somewhere, but we're waiting on delivery of the netting, and as soon as it arrives, it will be installed. The second part of that question, has power been installed to the bottom half of the airport? I don't know. Power to the airfield has always been there. Power installations for servicing of hangars, etc., is the responsibility of the people who own those hangars or lease those hangars. That's their responsibility, so I can't answer that question. Is insurance still maintained? Yes, of course it is. That is a given. And have all leases been signed and in alignment with the new charter? No, they haven't. That's a very, very slow process and is still being worked through and negotiated with the various leaseholders. Some have been more cooperative than others, but that's a process we have to go through and will continue to take some time. Has business improved or decreased since reverting to an ALA? Not really quite sure what that question means, because I'm not quite sure what the business that question refers to. But as far as we're concerned, I'm not really aware of any change, as it's not actually our business. I am, of course, aware that one of the business owners out there who operated a maintenance business has relocated from the airfield. That was due to a dispute between the owner of that business and the leaseholder of the hangar, excuse me, where his business was located. So that was completely independent of anything to do with council. So as far as council is concerned, it's business as usual, maintenance as usual. The facility is safe. Worthwhile mentioning, were successful in receiving money, I think about $80,000 to match the $10,000 that council has put in for the upgrade of the fence to make kangaroo-proof fencing, to make sure the wildlife stays off the landing ground, and off the runways. That's obviously a safety issue. But we acknowledge the work of Anne Webster in helping us to achieve the $80,000 for that federal government grant. So that work will commence shortly. Of course, it joins the long list of capital works that we actually have to do around the Shire, and that is one of them. But we will continue to maintain the airfield to keep it safe. We're keen to get the fencing done as soon as we can, because that's when we can start to actually realise some of the savings that are possible through the changes that we have implemented out there at the airfield. Okay, so let's move on from that one. The energy breakthrough, Hugh, this one's falls well and truly into your lap. There's a question here that's come in around the energy breakthrough. The energy breakthrough has been cancelled. Can you explain what happens now? What is going to happen with the money that was announced recently from the state government?
Good question, Noel. And firstly, I want to say, look, it's with a heavy heart that we had to cancel the event. I know there was a lot of enthusiastic students and parents, and particularly teachers, that were really looking forward to come to Mirabara for the celebration event, which is at the end of the work they do at school, which we know as the Energy Breakthrough event in Mirabara. But for the safety of the participants, the visitors, the volunteers, and particularly the local community, I think we didn't have any other choice but to cancel this year's event. But that gives us a lot more time to plan for what will be even a bigger and better event next year. It will be, when the next event is held, the 30th anniversary since the running of the Energy Breakthrough in Mirabara. So we need to do it well. We want to do it with style, but importantly, we are grateful and we have welcomed the $1.5 million from the state government. That'll give us time now to plan in more detail for the event next year, but also look at how we market it, what infrastructure requirements we've got there, all of those things. We've put in, as we've spoke about, it was again another priority project for our council, and we're grateful for the money we've been given by the state government. We want to do it wisely. We will consult with the schools, the students and the teachers about, look, we've been doing much the same thing for the last 29 years. Can we do it better? Is there any improvements we need to do? But we'll also consult widely with the volunteers who play a critical role in the running of this energy breakthrough. So again, the money is there. It is for the energy breakthrough. We didn't have to have it spent for this year's event, but we do need to spend it in the next year and a half probably. But importantly, we'll be able to do it much more targeted and wisely, because we've got better planning time, because we've now abandoned the event for this year. But again, I say sorry to the participants, but also I think to a lot of our businesses. We know that it brings in nearly $5 million to our Shire through economic activity over the Energy Breakthrough event, which runs for 4 days. And I know that it is a major loss to those accommodation places, and also the eateries, the hoteliers, all those, there's a big fill up for them. It's a bit like their harvest. Like, I know Karen and myself have been in the farming community, but the Energy Breakthrough was like a harvest for the business sector of Mirabara. So we're sorry that we're not going to be able to hold it this year. But again, we're not on our own for a lot of these type of events that have had to be cancelled right across Australia, or right across Victoria particularly.
Yeah, fair enough. And look, I know with the work that you've done, I guess that does give us the opportunity, Hugh, doesn't it, to actually set up for future events. to utilise the financials that we have been supported by from the state government, and to utilise that to make sure that we build a bigger and better event for the future. And that work will continue on, even though the event isn't actually happening this year. And yeah, it was. I know how difficult that was, and I commend you and your team, and of course our partners in this, the CEP, the Country Education Program, and our Country Education Partnership. And they've been key partners in this right from day one, and they've been fantastic support. And they work with the schools, and we rely very heavily on that partnership to pull off this event. So it will be. I'm looking forward to coming back in future years to see this event bigger than it's ever been, and we are confident that will happen.
The good thing, Noel, is that I know there's a lot of enthusiasm with the students and the teachers of schools. There's also, we've been contacted with all our sponsors, whether that be La Trobe University, Transurban, Country Roads Victoria. They're some of our bigger ones, but we've even got a lot of smaller ones there. All of them have said they're staying on board. They want to be with us for the next running of the event. So we've been in consultation with them. But importantly, we want to thank a lot of the contractors. I know a lot of them are local people, the electrician and those that do an enormous amount of work to help us set up for this year's event. So the contractors and the volunteers are locally, we thank them, and all of them I know are keen for it to happen again next year.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, we do need to move along. One which we always features on all of our listening posts since we started is the Carrisburg levy and the works that are going on there. And there's a number of questions came in around this one, so I'll pull them all together, I guess, into one sort of big question, and we can just discuss them fairly generally. The general questions were around, what's happening with the Carrisburg levy, and but also the bit of interest in the other creek works. As well as part of that. So I might just kick this one off, and Karen, who's been with this one right the way through, can perhaps add some bits and pieces as we go, because a lot is in fact happening now with the levy. We are starting to get to the pointy end of this project. It's been a long, frustrating project, and I know everybody's frustrated by this one, including us. But I can say that things have progressed quite a bit since our last listening post. Can say that negotiations with the landholders are now being concluded, and appropriate agreements and documents and licenses, etc., all need to be now prepared for signing when we get to that conclusion. It's not just a simple matter of saying, well, we're just simply going to buy some land and that's the end of it. Of course, it's much more complex than that, because there's issues around access. There are subdivisions that need to be approved. Access is required to, we start sort of cutting up properties, etc. There are grazing rights that need to be agreed, and all those sorts of things. So we're very, very close to finalising that. When all those bits and pieces are finalised, and I'm confident that will be probably within the next week or so, the transfers then have to be registered under Section 35 of the Subdivision Act. And so there's quite a complex process, that it's not just simply say, hey, we agree on the money, here's the money, now we've got the land, and there's a bit of work to do in that. So also, as part of our planning permit, those people who've been following this one closely, we do need to lodge some information with the North Central Catchment Management Authority as part of our planning permit. So the detailed design has been reviewed in preparation for that submission to the CMA. And then as part of that, also discussions are underway with VicTrack and Rural Roads Victoria with regard to the pipes, etc., underneath the highway and things like that. Those conversations are now taking place, and planning is starting to put in place. So that's the process there. I'll come back to the dollars in just a moment. The other major step that I know the community is interested in, the consultants have been engaged to undertake the development of the environmental management plan for the creek within the town boundaries, not the whole creek. This is within the town boundaries. We are doing a management plan, and the consultants are about to undertake that work. It's been slowed down just a little because of the COVID situation. And we're reviewing the timelines and the project milestones around that. And that work involves a great deal of consultation with the community and various environment groups around the local area in relation to how the creek is managed within the town. And that plan will form the basis for all works on the creek into the future. So we don't have this constant discussion and debate around what's happening and why.
Yeah.
It will all be concluded as part of that plan. The other one, just to touch on, is the funding. The actual additional cost that we need to complete that work is $1.8 million. That was not, entirely a surprise to us. It was always known right from the word go. Even the previous council was aware that there was about probably a close would be a $1 million shortfall that would need to be covered. However, we do have $2.25 million available. The finances around the creek, around the levy and the creek are quite complicated and quite hard to follow because they're going over a number of years and there's a number of different funding sources. But we do have the $2.25 million available right now as just to commence those works. We have received 50% of that money, which we now have, and we are holding that money. And the rest of that money is claimed as the works progress. We don't get all that money up front. So that is all in place. Council's entire contribution is in the budget and is budgeted for, but we have some money available and it's now the balance of our contribution is in this year's budget. So that will be finalised in early August. And then it's the last little piece, which is the 2 contributions from the state and federal government under the National Disaster Recovery Grants System, I think it's called, doesn't matter. And so that's an agreement which is between the state and federal government. That's the last piece of the puzzle that will be finalised in coming weeks, and we're in discussion with government around that one. So a lot of things happening in the background, and as you referred to before, we're really disappointed we haven't been able to complete this project before we start, before we leave. However, it will be started, and I'm absolutely confident of that, and we are getting very, very close to doing some preparation now for the actual construction work. So watch this space. I think in the next few weeks, you'll see some real action happening in that place. Karen, have I missed anything around that? You're probably closer.
No, I don't think you have actually. No, although I would just comment that the figure that we've got in our budget, I think does include a carryover amount.
Yep.
So I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it's an 800.
Yep.
In the budget, and I think of that 800, 400 plus is carryover from one of those myriad funding sources you were talking about.
Indeed.
So there was just a bit of a clarification about that. And I think the other thing is that people have informed me that once we get through all of what you've just outlined, the actual building and erecting the levee is actually not going to take very much time, weather of course permitting.
Indeed.
And most people will be aware we've already got a large quantity of what we'll need as the material for the levee is ready pretty much. Mm-hmm. So once we get all of these other pieces of the puzzle, it shouldn't take very long then to actually erect the levee, which will be great. But I doubt that we will see it before we do leave. So we'll all have to meet back at the levee, I think, after.
We'll have to come back for the grand opening of the levee or something.
I think we need a grand opening of the levee.
The levee itself, I think you're right, it's fairly straightforward. It's just simple earthworks. There was the design requirements, I think, that need to be reviewed with some site deviations around some old trees that need to be protected. That's what needed to be approved by the CMA. I guess probably the part that will take the longest is actually the crossing of the highway, and I suspect that will take some time to do. Probably as much time doing that as there would be for the levee itself. But look, that's in the hands of the contractors, and but we're confident that we'll see that work happening very, very shortly. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, yeah, we've heard all that before," and yes, you have, and so have we. But we're not going to be deterred, and we will continue to work to build that levee to protect the community as soon as we possibly can. Okay, so let's keep moving. We've had a couple of questions come in that we're trying to get some information on. If we don't get that in time, we'll undertake to get back to people. So if anybody has just joined us, it's good to have you on board. We've covered a whole range of topics this morning, and we've still got a few to go. So let's keep moving on them. There has been a question submitted regarding the. Could you give us a condition report on the mosaics in Denali and a report on the direction the council intends to take the repair? This is one which has been bouncing around. I'm not sure that is formal. Has been formally raised with the council. A few people have put stuff on social media around this one. However, I did check on where that was at and what the issues were. The mosaics have been formally inspected, and there is some flaking and some damage to a few tiles on some of those mosaics. But generally speaking, the mosaics are in a very good and safe condition. So there's no dramas there. And our art staff are having discussions with the artists who actually designed and worked on those pieces of work about what's the best way to undertake the repairs that are required. So it's in hand, and it's no big drama. It's something which obviously we need to maintain. These have been done. Our councils, formally we own those, so we do need to actually maintain those as best we can. And there's expertise required in doing that. So of course we go back to the original design and makers of those pieces of work to get their advice on what needs to be done to fix it and protect them going forward. So that's a fairly straightforward one. There's been another question that's come up, and it sort of relates to some of the issues we talked about, particularly local businesses, and you guys may want to make a comment on this one. There's been a lot of publicity about the amount of grants that have been given to council. What are we going to spend it all on? And when will we see things start? And then there's what about the Carrisburg levy was added to that one. So let's concentrate. We've dealt with the levy, so let's talk about all the other granting opportunities. Do you guys want to make some comments around that?
Well, Noel, one that I'd love to talk about, and I haven't had the opportunity because of COVID to visit, I know you did a couple of weeks ago, was the Mirabara Indoor Leisure Centre. When we arrived and we went and had a look around the Shire at a lot of the facilities, and particularly in my interest of sport, I have to say Mirabara was one of the first places in Victoria to get an indoor swimming pool, but I don't think much had happened since it'd been there. And I have to say that the people who run the facility were very concerned about the change rooms and that, particularly for people with a disability. And I know now that that's been upgraded and completed. Also the indoor basketball stadium's got a new floor and new seatings going in there. So again, we've been greatly supported by the federal and state governments in relation to that, but that's one of the larger grants that we've got for our Shire. The other one that I think that I'm really proud of as one of the administrators is we lobbied hard to get some money to do some community plans for all the communities across our Shire. There was an extensive work done, extensive consultation done. I know even the consultant, when we had Australia Day, come across and was involved in meeting people at Talbot and Daisy Hill and all the communities in the Shire. And those community plans are a great directory now for the incoming council and the community to work with on what are the projects that they'd like to see funded. So again, we've put them into our new priority projects document, which we'll again use to lobby governments and state and federal. But in relation to some of the money we've got. But I have to say, one we've also took a little while to get was money to do the recreation and open space strategy. When we arrived, I know every sporting group lobbied us as administrators for support to upgrade their facilities or whatever it may be. We did get support to do the Carrisburg change rooms, and I have to say, when you saw the change rooms that those people got changed out there, particularly for the women's competitors, they were a disgrace. I don't know how they got away with using them, but we're not far away from starting work on the building of that. The tenders, I think, are just about out for the works to be done. So again, that was a large lot of money that's come in to help do that. We've got, as you know, we've got a couple of $1 million to upgrade the Mirabara swimming pool. We'd already got a little bit of money, and we'd put some money in from council to do the necessary requirements to keep that facility open. And we're about to start work on that, but because we've got this other $2 million to do a major redevelopment down there, we'll marry that all together. So again, there's some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head, but I have to say I'm disappointed I haven't been to the leisure centre, because the photos I saw in the Mirabara paper, and I've got the Mirabara Advertiser here with me again today, and I have to say the Mirabara Advertiser, to their credit, not too many papers have survived COVID, but the Mirabara Advertiser has done a great job keeping the community informed, and the photos I had in there of the leisure centre really whetted my appetite to get over there and have a look at it.
Oh, great.
Karen, did you want to say anything about the projects?
No, not particularly, but just to pick up on Hugh's point about from now on, we'll be able to also hopefully be able to marry together some of the projects that are coming up from those community plans, so that we will be able then to draft up and work on some priorities across the whole Shire. You know, I think there is some strength in arguing a bigger case sometimes than a smaller one. So, and that's been proven with the Healthy Hearts thing. We had done very well, I think, as a Shire from the things that were funded under that program. So I think that's going to be helpful. And I think it's so far what we've been able to do is actually to get going and actually utilise the grants. It's been great. It's been, I guess, a response to our priority listing of what had, through our listing posts and other community involvement, we've been able to advocate for. And sometimes when you see so many grants fall out of the clear blue sky, in my long experience, it's been for things that perhaps you really wonder, well, who did apply for those? Whereas the things that we have received funding for are all targeted. I think that's a great thing, really. So, yeah, I congratulate the state government on that approach to things. So I think that's about all I'll make at this stage.
I think one important point around that, and I think both of you touched on it, the $800,000 got for the Community Infrastructure Fund, again, with Anne Webster's support. We have identified that as critical to implement some of our community plans. And it's really good to be able to develop those plans and then start ticking off some of those projects with that funding. But also because they're relatively small projects, I guess in the overall sense, it enables us to use local contractors, local businesses, local trades doing some of that work, so we can actually create some economic activity locally. I think that's something which we're very committed to doing, to make sure that those funds are spent where we can. They are done locally. Just one small correction, Hugh. Those two projects at the outdoor pool have actually now been completed. I don't know whether you've seen that. You probably haven't. I think that grass has just been installed and the shade sails are in place. But the $2 million we've now got, I think we are in the process of going back now to the federal government, explaining what we're going to be using that for. And most of that will be driven by the conservation plan that we have. The Heritage Conservation Plan for the outdoor pool will be funded by that grant. So that's a really important one. So people will see those works unfold. Many of the grants we've got were given to us on the basis that we are ready to move fairly quickly. But of course, we need to say that most councils around the state have been funded similarly to us to do a whole range of projects across the state. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on council staff, on project managers, on contractors, etc. There's going to be a shortage. So they may take a little bit longer than we might like, because everybody's in the same boat and we're all competing for a fairly small group of expertise. We have had a couple of questions in which we've sort of been able to cover as we've been going through, but one which has come in while we're talking about pools is sort of wondering what's happening about the private swimming pool situation. The questioner says, we've paid our registration, but not knowing what is to happen next. This is a bit of a new activity that councils have been given by the state government. And I guess I've just sort of had a message passed to me to that questioner that yes, you have followed the right process. Private pools and spas must be registered with the council. And we'll obviously now pass on this request to make sure that our staff follow up to that particular questioner. But they've done the right thing. And if you own a pool or a spa, they are required to be registered. And that's a process which will be unfolding over. It's an extra workload. Of course, it's come at a time when we don't have a lot of resources for it. So that will, in fact, be unfolding going forward. Yes, Hugh, go on.
I know that originally, Noel, the state government required that every pool and spa had to be registered by the end of June.
Yes. Because
of COVID, it was put back a little bit. I'm not sure of the date, but my information
is September, I think it is, Hugh.
Yep. Yeah. But then the operator, the person who owns the pool will then be contacted, and they'll be told they have to get a certificate, in other words, an inspection done of their pool and make sure it's up to standard, and there'll be a certain time for that to be done also. But yes, every pool and spa right across Victoria has to be registered with their local council.
That's correct. And so having just gone through that process myself, it can be frustrating, but yes, the dates have been put back, I think, till late September. And that's something which, was been helpful given the situation we are all facing. Another question that's come in is around asking why there is no Fpos facility at the transfer station in Carrisburg. I have to say, I have absolutely no idea on that one, but it's just come in then, and we're going to be closing up very shortly. So we'll get back to that. So we'll pass on that feedback, because I don't know why that's not the case, but we'll see if we can find out on that one, but we will deal with it. I've got one more, which I think, just looking through my questions, I think I've covered them all. I got one left, which came in quite late. I think it came in late last night. It was about a casual position that was listed in our annual report back in the 18-19 financial year. The question was, it wasn't as part, it's in the council report, and it wasn't listed as one of the bands. It was an extra person that was listed there amongst the others rather than in the formal bandings. Who was this person? What they engaged to do at this high position? Does it exist, and what was the role, and what was the pay? Was what the question was asking. And I can tell you that having checked this one out, that the officer position was part of our governance reform program. That whole program, which was about $500,000 of expenditure to implement the reforms of the investigations. So that position wasn't in any of the bands. It wasn't a CEO type position. It was a position that simply didn't fit neatly in any of the band structures of council. And that position was to oversee that reform program. That actually finished in October 18. So it actually is only for a very short period of the 18-19 financial year. And of course, that position no longer exists. I'm not able to disclose the pay rates of all the person at all in that regard. That's obviously confidential information and not able to be disclosed. But I think all the information in relation to council staff is there in council's annual report. Pay scales, etc., within bands is all declared there. And if you can find that information on the pages 87 and 88, the questioner can find that information. I think that it concludes. We don't have any further questions come in. Yes, we got one very late question has come in. So we'll deal with that one and then we'll wind up. Okay, so the question I have is, who is responsible for the road parking out the front of the Caratel Caravan and Motel across the road near the golf club? Trucks parked there. The bitumen has been washed away. Water is sitting there, and is a parking spot for cars. I think that's a declared main road along there, but obviously that will be Vic Road's responsibility, but obviously it's managed in partnership with council. And to that questioner, I'll take that one on notice and see if we can get a response to that one. So I think we've run out of questions. It has taken us over an hour to do that. Can I say to everybody who has tuned in today, we do really appreciate your interest. Some great questions, and all it does for me is actually confirm the level of interest that's out there in the community about their shire, about their community, and about the things that are going on around about us. So I say thank you to all of you. I want to say thank you to my two colleagues, obviously, for joining us from outside, but also to acknowledge the work of Kate and Lockie in our comms department, etc., who've actually set this up and make sure it all happens smoothly. I think it's got off this morning without a hitch, as far as I can see. No one's frowning. But to all those people who sent in questions, we really do appreciate them. And I encourage you, please, if you have any further questions, you can email them in or give us a call. We are available to talk. And I know that's particularly important at the moment when we're not quite as accessible as we would like to be as individuals and as administrators. So please don't hesitate to email us. And of course, all our contact details are on our website, are in the paper each week, and certainly are well known. In closing, can I make just one final comment about the budget? Our budget is still out for comment. We have had some responses to our budget, which is great to see. It is until the end of this week, and then we will consider those submissions that have been made. If people wish to come and talk to their submissions, then they can come and do that, and we will go through that process. And we're planning to adopt our budget, a special meeting of council, I think in the first week of August. So that'll be a special meeting. We have a lot of work still ahead of us, and we will continue to work through that. There'll be plenty of opportunity for us to engage with our community going forward. We are hoping to have, we had originally said we'd love to have another in-person listening post where we can get out there to the community. If that's
yeah.
possible before we leave, we'll certainly intend to do that. But if we can't, we're going to continue to do this format because it certainly seems to be working very, very well. So thank you to you all. One final note, please, if you possibly can, stay safe. Make sure you wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, keep your physical distances wherever you're in a crowd or with other people. Make sure you comply with those regulations. And if you can, as uncomfortable and as unpleasant as it might be, make sure that you wear your mask when you're required to do so. This is the only way. I believe I saw a flash that came through, 485 people was the number that came out today, which is a scary, scary number. I haven't heard how the state government is going to respond to that, but I suspect it's going to make it harder and harder for us to do the things that we'd like to do. So I encourage everybody, please do the right thing, whether you think it's important or not. It's important for those people that you love, for those people around you, and we need to look after each other. Support your local business, be kind to each other, and be kind to yourself. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next session. Thank you very much.